Hi, hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bit Show. I'm Meghna,
And I'm Upamanyu.
and we've got a great show planned for you. As obviously, we're going to cover our headline topic, but it covers two parts. We're going to talk about how fish deformities are exposing collapse of Xingu River's pulse after construction of the Belo Monte Dam. And in conjunction with that, what are we covering? Oops.
In conjunction with that, we are also covering a story on the Great Indian Bustard, where the protection of this species has altered significantly the government's green energy plans. We
And
also have something from the UK, which is also going to be a two-part story, where in the first part, uh, the winter blooming of plants has been marked as a visible signal of climate breakdown. And to go along with that,
we are also going to be talking about how UK's warmest spring on record has led to rise in songbirds breeding. Apart from this, we are also going to be talking about how great white sharks are getting extinct in the Mediterranean. What else do we have
a-
on the roster, Oops?
and there is another um, exactly opposite to that, where Colossal has been trying long for de-extincting some species that went extinct a long time back, and their niches are completely gone as well. But now the scientific community is waking up and realizing the fact that they did not de-extinct anything. So I think that's it for today's roster. We'll talk about all those things. Happy New Year to all of you, and stay tuned.
Yes. So the headline topic and why we say this is a two-part series because we're going to talk about how um, one fish, and this is one example of how if you don't protect them what could happen, and in another story we're going to talk about how protection should supersede everything else. So this is a story from China. It says fish deformities expose collapse of Xingu River's pulse after construction of Belo Monte Dam. This is a news from Monga Bay, and it reads as independent monitoring reveals a high rate of fish deformities in Brazil's Volta Grande to Xingu area, nearly a decade after the Belo Monte Dam began operating in 2016. Researchers observed zombie fish, malnourished caporari with wounds and parasites, and now silver croakers exhibiting squat, rounded bodies. These changes are linked to the dam's reduced river flow, causing altered flood pulses, water pollution, increased temperatures, and food scarcity. The findings have prompted scrutiny from federal prosecutors and independent researchers who recently warned of potential ecosystem collapse at the COP30 climate summit. The ongoing impacts demonstrate the long term consequences of large scale hydroelectric projects on Amazonian ecosystems. Um, so yes, I'm sorry. In the starting, I think I said China, but this is from Brazil. This is a story from Brazil, and this discussion question on this is it possible to achieve tech or infra development without hurting the environment? I think this is something we have been talking about in every episode. That when we talk about development and when we talk about the economic growth, we hardly take into consideration the animals that are getting affected by it. And this is one prime example because there has been notable research, and it has shown that when you have the reduced river flow and increased temperatures and food scarcity, it can alter the way a fish looks like. So that is really scary. I think we see that even with humans, right? Like really malnourished humans suffer from diseases that you only suffer from when you're malnourished to that extent. And for these fish, they would not have been normally malnourished. Like it's not a natural flow for them to be malnourished. It's only because of the
Hmm.
dam.
I think that the question that we wanted to talk about also the perspective of the question we also wanted to talk about is that, is it because from my perspective, I see this dam or a dam existing as a very important step for the survival of the local peoples. Now, ha, uh, so this is very important for the human population that probably lives there and in the surrounding areas, probably because dam waters, if it's meant for drinking, then it goes to a lot of you know lot of far reaching areas. But is it like, and we have been doing this since the industrial revolution, like prioritizing human needs over the natural or environmental needs. Now, the question for me essentially is that, is this the way forward as well? Like, is this the only way we know how to do things? Is it not possible to do things any other way? Or is it, um is there a solution, a middle ground, because we don't hear about those middle ground examples. Media does not cover it a lot. Maybe there are people doing those kinds of things, but we don't hear about it as often. So that might mean also that it is not being done as often. So is there a middle ground for all this? Is there a more you know considering path in this kind of development? Because I can understand that this development is also required, and people who are maybe suffering from no water, or they don't have enough drinking water, or maybe there is a power shortage or anything like that, um they might be very happy for this dam to exist, I think.
But I think it's not just the dam, it's also when you make a dam, the kind of what would you say, the kind of uh, permissions and everything that you need for these kind of things, they're readily given by the government. There's not a lot of study done on the side effects or the impacts or how you can reduce the impacts, or if there was any other way for the dam to be made. So there was like there was some kind of flow that was okay for the fish to survive. The what the dams do is that there's a reservoir on one side, but the other side gets dry because it's all dependent on how much flow you're going to release. And you kind of change the pattern, and you change the migratory movement as well of the fish, because you made this reservoir from where like water falls from a level. So it changes the biological functioning of this fish. So there has to be some way that you can do development, but a sustainable way in which these fish don't get affected to that extent, that that they survive. And because all of this water that you need as well, everything, it's all regulated by everything that lives in these water bodies. So if you're going to remove all the fish, the entire ecosystem is going to collapse there.
Mm. And I think that is also, and we keep coming back to this, I think it's also this kind of changes happening is also a function of um us being as populated on this planet as we are. Because if our population was less, our demands would have been less, and we would have been able to maintain that balance. But I think because our population is so high, it becomes far more important and far more essential that we take into consideration all the different factors that happen. Because I can understand, as I said, that the government has to give this sort of permissions. If they don't give, there might be a different kind of protest, that the government is stopping development, or the government is not wanting its citizen to give all the facilities and all the human rights, or however you might call it.
True, but it is, at the end of the day, it's the locals that suffer. So the locals that might be dependent on the river fish, or anything else that is dependent on the river fish that the locals are dependent upon, that entire cycle breaks. Just like in Andamans in India, there's been so much shark fishing, so much shark fishing. A lot of it illegal, that you have taken out the apex predators, and now like the fish population is slowly collapsing, and a lot of people are dependent on groupers and rays now, and the locals are not happy about that, because at the end of the day the food source is always something that is locally available for most of these communities that depend on the river or the sea or the on the mountain, whatever wildlife stays there. So it's going to impact the people. So the same people that you're talking about who might be happy would be sad at a later stage because the ecosystem is collapsing that they're dependent on.
Mm. No, and I think again, as I said, like just to also continue my thought there, um, like in control, if we did it in control, um, in a way that uh, I'm very sure that we could do it in a way that benefits the environment and not harms the environment. I, I wouldn't say very sure, but I'm like 90% sure of that fact because in nature, such a thing exists. We all know about beavers. Beavers are some of the world's most skilled, as we call them, ecosystem engineers, with an incredible ability to create like new wetlands and restore native woodland and improve, all these wetland habitats and woodland habitats for the better. And one of the ways they do it is by building dams. They build dams which filter waters and with like sticks and stones and things like that, and these things are beautiful to witness. Even the nests, these things are beautiful to witness. They build this whole underground entry, underwater entry, and things like that. Now I can imagine, you know 200,000, 100,000 years ago, humans doing the same thing, because primitive human, like evidence of primitive human made dams have been found in the archaeological record. So I can imagine humans doing the same thing, um building those dams, but in turn inadvertently maybe helping the surrounding wetlands and water bodies and ecosystems and things like that. So I'm sure we can learn from the beavers and learn from our ancestors even, and do things in a way. I'm very sure, as I said, 90% sure.
No, that is
Um,
true, but I think oops, the problem is the problem that you cited before, like population. So when there are so many people, everything that is taken into account, like all the actions that we used to take earlier for a small amount of population, that is not possible. So now these big commercial projects have come into picture because of the population. So like community fishing or wherever the locals fish, they fish with really sustainable methods. They don't trawl the ocean, and they make sure that the ocean recovers. There are even these fishing rules like in India, like months that have are, and then you don't fish in those months and all of those kind of things. You have a lot of like rules, or how traditionally we actually thrived or coexisted with the environment. But now with everything that is industrial and commercially developed, that is where the problem is. So those don't take into account the smaller things, like trawling, for example, like because you have so much need and greed or want, you have these deep sea trawlers just like destroying the entire ocean, as opposed to the locals. Similarly, what you're talking about, those beaver made dams or human made simple dams, they exist even in like smaller rural areas. People still build those kind of bridges and dams and everything. But on a large scale, when you involve like these corporations and you involve the government, it is really hard that large scale corporations would look into the ill effects of what they're doing on the environment.
yes, I agree with that. Like, if you give a profit making business and how we have structured the world in that structure, if we have a profit making business and we give them a project, they would look at their profits and they would look at their self interests. Now, my question is, at the very core, is it still possible to do it in a sustainable way, where, because we can't let go of the human needs. I obviously can't overlook the human needs, where humans would need water or energy or whatever the dam is providing those group of humans with. Now, is it possible for us to do it in a sustainable way? Taking it out of the equation that the companies are working for grid, is there a realistic solution that if the companies enabled those solutions, then we would be able to say that, okay, there might have been some compromises both for the humans and for the environment, but all in all, it's a net positive thing. Is there such a solution, not only for this, but for any kind of development? Otherwise, the only solution is that we kind of have to prioritize our own good in most cases. So if there isn't a solution and people are dying of drought, or maybe they don't have electricity in their homes, then we have probably have to accept the fact that, yeah, this is going to cause some trouble to the environment.
No, so the thing is, there are two, three things. Obviously, these big corporations have to either be forced by the government or forced by the public to take all of this into consideration. Because at the end of the day, even if you say that, oh, I need it for the droughts or I need it for everything else, you need the fish as well that survive in it. Because at the end of the day, you would not have that water, you would not have that clean water, you would not have, you do not know what else would grow there. If you take out some amount of fish, you might have some other bacteria or virus that they were controlling. You never know what can happen with the kind of deformities that the fish are causing. So instead of letting that slide away, like saying that okay, that's fine, we have to find a solution. There is a solution. Just like how organic food is more expensive, maybe solutions to these kind of big projects might be more expensive, but there has to be a way that can be sustainable. We cannot just be like, our needs are more important. There is nothing that can be sustainable. But I'm also quickly once sharing my screen so I can just show you the fish. So this is a video. This is the article from Mongla Bay, and this is one of the fishermen, a fisherwoman, a local fisherwoman there, and they've showed how the fish are deformed. So these fish are normally elongated, and they're not round. But if you see in this, they most of them are roundish, and they're not just elongated. So that is worrying because that is not the same way that they should be looking. And this shows how there's like very little water in a lot of places, so it's like severely reduced water flow. And there
Mm,
are fish on the banks, like they're floundering on the banks here.
mm,
um, and this is a map of the sites. So this is the Belo Monte site, the intermediate reservoir, and the Volte Grande do Xingu. So it looks really dry as well, even on the maps. um, so this is the portion that's suffering the most, with no water flow. Um,
mm,
so yeah, this is a great article because it shows how the river flows have been there, how reduced the river flows have been there, or how it is impacting the entire area.
mm. Yeah, no, I think, as you said, if a solution exists like that, if that can be achieved, you know, at a greater cost, maybe, then the government should definitely force that kind of research and force that kind of, or bring into policy that kind of requirement that this is something that you have to do, in order to, because the solution clearly is there. I'm saying again, I don't know enough about this to know that if a solution like that truly exists. But if it exists, then definitely, or if it requires a little more research to know if it exists or not, if such a solution exists or not, then we should definitely spend that time, energy, money to figure this out. Because although the fish are not dying, but their morphology is being changed, um, you know, in a drastic way, so which could lead to their not existing anymore. So yeah, I think that those things should be taken into consideration, and it's high time that we do it, because we would be we would not stop development, I think, anytime soon. So it's high time that we figure out these things, that how do we coexist and live and let live kind of an attitude. How do we take that?
Yes, because obviously the population that's also dependent on that river where the river flow is reduced, they're also suffering. The fish are also suffering. So we'll keep you updated if there's any update on this, and if there's anything in the positive way where the government has taken steps to negate the dam's negative impacts. And maybe after the COP30 summit, there has been something. So we will keep you updated, but we'll shift to the second part of the story now.
True. That's a good idea. Um, this comes from a publication called Down to Earth, where this is headline, and again, this just illustrates what we were just talking about, that there can be a solution, or there can be um, people and governments and local bodies that prioritize wildlife over development. So this is the Judiciary Supreme Court ruling. Great Indian Bustard protection alters green energy plans. The story reads: the Supreme Court's recent ruling on Great Indian Bustard GIB protection significantly impacts India's green energy corridor projects in Rajasthan and Gujarat. After 4 year long legal battle, the court finalized a framework balancing renewable energy goals with GIB conservation. Now, GIB is one of the most endangered birds in India. Very few, a handful, 100 or 150 or so remaining. It We have talked about GIB in previous episodes as well. But this article goes on to say, initially, a 2021 order mandated undergrounding all power lines across nearly 99,000 square kilometer of GIB habitat, stalling GEC development and risking stranded assets. Over 9 gigawatts of solar capacity awaited transmission and approvals. Acknowledging technical and economic concerns, the court modified its order in March 2024. The December verdict legally solidifies revised priority conservation areas: 14,013 square kilometer in Rajasthan and 740 square kilometer in Gujarat, where new wind turbines are prohibited, while preserving core GEC infrastructure. GIB protection remains non-negotiable. Now, this is exactly the kind of solution that um, I was kind of thinking and talking about. Now, um, one of the major causes of GIB death is that they get trapped or electrocuted by the open transmission wires that run through this and is required for um, transmission of electricity across larger, and is the standard worldwide for transmission of electricity. Now, see how the court original order was undergrounding power lines across 99,000 square kilometer. Now, of course, there was lobbying, and that 99,000 number almost reduced 90% to like 14,000 square kilometers, and 740 in Gujarat. So, like, reduced by 75 to 90%, 80%, 80 to 85%. Now, but this is the solution. Like, because they're dying of above ground things, which are power lines and things like that, put it underground. Now, one might say there are species living underground which will be greatly affected by that, but I don't know, metro constructions and things like that, how we do it in the cities, where anything above ground or anything underground is not affected by all the dust and um, all the debris. Maybe that's the way. But obviously, this was challenged, and the government, the judiciary revised its views. But I think the spirit of it is still there.
Yeah, I think even though they've changed the area of how much undergrounding is there, they're trying to also protect the Great Indian Bustards at the same time. So
Yeah.
even though they're not able to accommodate both. So they're trying to accommodate both in some way that the core infrastructure of the solar project is not delayed. So there is renewable energy also running. But at the same time, there is a big area that they have said that there can be no new power lines, no wind turbines, no expansion of renewable projects in those areas. So there's an area that they have cordoned off, saying that these areas are non-negotiable and these areas have to maintain the undergrounding of the power supplies and no new projects coming up. So that way, it's great that there is a huge enough area for the Great Indian Bustard. It could have been bigger, but probably this is a start because on the other end there is solar electricity and there's renewable energy that we want that also spreads and we have lesser and lesser impact or lesser and lesser dependence on fossil fuels. So it's a nice way to bring both of them together, but we have to see if the GIBs would be okay with this much protection or if they would need. But this is a great step, and this shows the government's initiative also, like the locals and the government building something together. Because for the locals, especially the Bishnois that stay there, the bustards are critically important. Like in their folklore and in their traditional values, the bustard holds a very important place. So this way, this is great that they're appeasing the locals and they're making sure that there are renewable projects as well.
That is exactly what I was talking about. That this renewable energy project is essentially important to reduce our dependence. So do I think the dam. Maybe that dam is being used for the hydroelectric project. But here in one case, they took an approach where they gave this statement that GIB protection remains non-negotiable. Where on the other hand, maybe the fish that are affected there may not be this such an endangered species or considered, and there they were completely neglected. So this is what I'm talking about, like focusing when you mandate something is non-negotiable, the environment is non-negotiable, then the corporations and the people working towards it, they become more aware of that um, that requirement, and they figure out solutions. We as human beings are, I always applaud our ingenuity and ability to find innovative solutions to complex problems. And I'm sure that given those restrictions and constraints, we would have been able to do the same in in the case of the Xingu River. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is a very fair point where you're saying that the fish might not be critically endangered, so they don't see um the hurry in executing
mm,
something that might save them or protect them. They might also not be affecting humans directly at the moment, like how if there are infected fish or fish that have become poisonous because their morphology has changed and it has led to deaths of humans or sickness in humans, then the government would definitely step in and take faster steps because it's indirectly or directly affecting us. But in this case, maybe those fish are just not as important as the Great Indian Bustards. With the bustards as well, they have reached a really fragile point, which is why probably the government is taking such active interest in protecting them. If they were like pigeons, then probably it wouldn't matter, and the solar power and everything else that they're working for there, they would have just been blindly accepted. But this is a great step in the right direction because India is showing that if you really value a species and if that species matters, then you can take steps where you can try to protect the bird and at the same time also create renewable energy sources. Yes, and we're going to do a next story again, which has two sides. This again has a positive and a negative impact to the same climate patterns. Oops, you want to take up the first bit?
yes, this is a story from The Guardian. This is headlined "Winter Blooming of Hundreds of Plants in UK, a Visible Signal of Climate Breakdown." Unusual winter blooms of hundreds of plant species across the UK are being cited as a visible signal of climate breakdown. Met Office analysis of a 9-year plant hunt reveals a correlation. For every 1 degree rise in November December temperatures, 2.5 more species bloom during the new year. The year's hunt recorded 310 native and 646 total flowering species, far exceeding the typical 10 expected. Wow, this is like 300%, 600% increase. Right. Scientists at the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland emphasize this is clear evidence of climate change impacting wildlife, with daisies and dandelions flowering prematurely. The ongoing citizen science project, running until Sunday, highlights how rising temperatures disrupt natural plant cycles. Um, and a discussion question for this is a winter bloom beautiful or alarming?
I think in this case, it's both beautiful and alarming because um, plants that are not supposed to bloom in the season that they are supposed to bloom, it marks a big climate turnover. So the same plants would not bloom in the season that they were supposed to bloom on. And then any insects or birds or any other animals that are dependent on those plants would be confused as to how to, get to those plants or be at the same time that the plant is blooming. So this could cause a complete environment breakdown or a climate breakdown, as it says in this article.
Yes, and I think this is going to become the reality more and more as the planet warms and as um, on the whole we are affected by climate change. I think um, as we were saying, like it looks beautiful, it is beautiful to look at. We discussed a story about lupins in several countries that bloom there. It's very beautiful to look at, you know it's truly beautiful to look at, and I could imagine these flower blooms being very, very beautiful as well. But it signals something far more far more dangerous. And if these flowers are able to survive, these ecosystems have developed over thousands of years. As we keep saying, these ecosystems have developed over thousands of years in a very delicate balance, and most of these ecosystems are very interdependent on each other, as Meghna was saying as well. So changing, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and it's a big balance in that jigsaw puzzle. So if one piece moves, the entire puzzle has the potential of going in the wrong direction, or us never being able to complete that jigsaw puzzle. um
Yeah, I've
yeah.
shared an image from the article which shows the frosty daisy.
Hmm.
And these daisies do not flower in the frozen winter. So this is where it gets what would you say, alarming, only because you're not supposed to see these flowers. And as we know, flowers are the, you know what would you say, flowers are what attract bees, what attract the pollination, what attract the little insects. All of them are flowers. Even there's so many birds dependent on flowers. So if the flowers are blooming in the winters, then they may not bloom in the spring when they're supposed to be blooming. And all the birds that are dependent on this, all the insects, they wouldn't know what to do anymore, and
Is
that
that
would
the case
cause
though? Like, are they not blooming in the spring? I would have imagined that they're blooming like earlier than um
Yeah, they're probably so all these daisies and other things, they have like seasonal blooms. So I think the ones that would bloom in the winter would not be able to bloom in the spring. There might be late bloomers and early bloomers, so these might be the early bloomers. But I
hmm.
think there's a seasonal bloom for every plant. Like, you remember that plant that you once gifted me that would only bloom in the winters? It was a winter blooming plant, so it would not
Hmm.
survive the rest of the seasons. But if it were to survive in another season, and if there was something dependent on it, then that insect or that animal's clockwork would be completely off the chart because they wouldn't know what to do with it, because that they would go to that plant only in the winters, right? Or in spring. So there's like a clockwork for animals.
Yeah, no, I don't see, like, how do you mean? Like, I don't see any ill effect on the environment in terms of ill effect on the plants and bees that are dependent on it on an from an early bloom. Like the early bloom, if they're still blooming in the normal time, then there is no ill effect on the plants and bees and the pollinators that are dependent on it. But I think the main issue here is they should not bloom then, and the reason they're blooming early is very catastrophic because the planet is warming at a more alarming rate than we imagine. But I can't see any direct relation to the pollinators how they
How
would be
can
affected.
No, because I think there are seasons where these pollinators are also active, right? So there are seasons. The winters would be seasons where mostly everything is slower, dormant, migratory, even with birds. So they come back probably in certain seasons for certain plants and everything. So it would affect the cycle because those pollinators are not supposed to be working in those months on those flowers.
No, but if they're not coming to those flowers, if they're hibernating or whatever, then they don't they not care? Like if they're getting their pollination and nectar when they want it, then that's I think that's enough for them. Like
Yeah,
why
but
would
that
they
they need to
be
be
affected by an early bloom?
but they need that needs to be there, right? Like, so if there's an early bloom and they couldn't get to the early bloom and the late bloom has only lesser flowers or half the flowers, or what there would be
Yeah,
generally.
if that is happening, I don't know if that is happening because the article doesn't say it. But if that is happening, then it's a concern for the pollinators. But if that is not happening, I don't see any direct
So
concern for the pollinators. Like,
let's say like these flowers only bloom in January between this to this, and the pollinators know that, so they also only approach during that time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
let's say half of it started happening in December, the pollinators don't know that, and then there would be like a whole traffic jam on the rest of the half, and they might
yeah. I
not
mean,
be.
if that is happening, I mean, daisies. I don't think they're such a sensitive plant. They're pretty adaptable. Daisies and dandelions. I think what it signals is more important than because I don't see anything happening to the pollinators because I don't think. I mean, daisies grow willy nilly everywhere, and even in your lawns, daisies will find a way to grow. So if they're blooming early, in my view, I don't think there is an impact on their in their the seasonal bloom
But it's
that
not just
happens.
it's
But
not just daisies, right? It's
dandelions.
no, no, not just daisies and dandelions, but it says this year's plant hunt recorded 310 native and 646 total flowering species that
Hmm.
that bloomed in November, December instead of the spring that they should bloom. So it like they're just focusing on, in the article they've talked about daisy and dandelions, but it's almost 1,000 species if you look at the
Hmm.
native species and the flowering species.
Yeah, maybe someone from the audience or someone who is researching on this can tell us that if this is actually affecting their normal or their ideal bloom time. The early if the early blooming is affecting the bloom numbers or in any way the bloom season of these flowering species. If yes, then yes, it is a concern for all the other parts of the ecosystem that are dependent on these blooms. But if no, then that's not really a concern. But definitely, what is very clear from this article is that it is a visible signal, as the article puts it. It is a very very visible signal of what is coming and what is happening, which might get overlooked by us. um,
Yeah, and I think this is just one part of the bigger picture, which means that if the climate is warming that much and it's changing the cycles for blooming, then it pretty much changes the cycle for everything going forward, because everything is on clockwork. So if this year these are blooming, next year you do not know what might get pushed even further. Even
Mm,
things like, from our childhood to now, oops, you remember mangoes were a thing of like 1 or 2 months in the summers.
mm.
But now
Really?
you
Yeah.
get them almost like all the way from March to October, like different species, but you get like a longer
Mm,
duration, because I think it's getting warmer sooner and it's staying longer, so it's more conducive for a lot of plants and trees, that warm environment. So we do not know if it is good or bad, but everything is changing.
yeah. But I also think that uh, it's also a function of the mangoes part. It's also a function of us having better facilities to store them, and but true, like we do get fruits and vegetables year round, that used to be only restricted to a particular season, um, and that is good for us humans, but we will often fail to overlook the what it signifies, as this article um, puts it very very well. um,
Yeah. And there is actually a second part to this story. So, this is the bleak
mm,
part where it says that the climate change is affecting the plants and it's a visible climate breakdown. There's a happy part to this. So, the second part basically reads as this is also from The Guardian. So, this reads as UK's warmest spring on record led to rise in songbirds breeding, data shows. Britain experienced a surge in songbird breeding success in 2025, attributed to the warmest and sunniest spring on record. Data from the British Trust for Ornithology revealed above average breeding rates for 14 species, including blue tits, chaffinches, and chiffchaffs. Volunteer bird ringers monitoring 29 species observed increased numbers of fledged young compared to the wet spring of 2024. Dr. Ellie Leach highlighted the crucial role of mild weather, especially for vulnerable young birds. While this offers a glimmer of hope for threatened species, scientists caution that many remain in long term decline, emphasizing the significant impact of weather conditions on bird populations. And our
mm,
discussion question on this is, can a warm spring offset long term bird decline, or is it just temporary relief? So, this is the stark opposite of the last article that we saw. In that, it was ringing alarm bells saying that the weather is warmer and there's so many plants that are blooming. And in this, it says that because the weather was warmer, it led to the success of a lot of birds breeding that were not breeding effectively the year earlier. So there are like two ways or two sides of the same story, where the warm weather is helping a few species and it's not helping some species.
mm. And I think this sounds good in theory. The birds are which are critically endangered, or their numbers are quite low, that we are seeing more of them, their breeding success is higher. It sounds very amusing, but um, I think all in all, this is again a sign of the same thing, that our planet is warming. It's a visible sign. It might be a great thing, and it's very difficult to reconcile in our heads um, how how a great thing, which it is, can be a thing that we probably don't want, and probably yeah, don't want. But I think also in the current scenario, it might be like, we'll take whatever we get. Uh, if the global warming is causing this, we'll take it maybe as a win. I don't know, but so it is very difficult to reconcile in our heads that this being bad, but um, I don't know
Yeah, I
how
think
how do we say this in a good light, or in a light that actually gets to the larger public.
I think the thing is that change is the only constant that we have. So if things are changing, some species might fare better than other species because it's survival of the fittest. And in this case, even though the plants are ringing alarm bells for these songbirds, it's actually great because they are threatened and they are their population is declining. So in some ways this is great because it's helping in their population to be controlled and balanced. And we have to just hope that the way that nature corrects itself, that this is just a auto correction that it's doing. But we do not know the long term effects. Like right now this is great, but if let's say there are only songbirds breeding and they take over all the other birds, then we do not know what that would mean for the other birds.
Which I can see it happening very easily. It will be easy to go into that space or go into that zone where, because obviously as we keep repeating ourselves that this whole um, ecosystem stands at a balance, and one, if you increase one thing, then the other thing might get affected by it, or if you decrease one thing, the other thing will, not might, but will get affected by those different changes, because everything is in a balance and everything um, is calibrated to it can probably take, there is a buffer, it can probably take a little bit more or a little bit less of the same species or the same part of the ecosystem existing or not existing. But if there is a bloom, which will happen if this continues, then we'll start talking about, how do we reduce the numbers, these have become a problem and things like that. And we have seen this happen, seen this cycle happen ever too often, I think.
Yeah, but for now, we have the two sides of the story. As you can see, one is alarming, but the other is reassuring. So we'll keep you updated on what we find out on this topic. But for now, we're happy that the songbirds are bouncing back, but we're not so happy with all the thousand plants that are blooming in the winter.
True, true. Should we move to another? Maybe I'll do a species discovery.
Sure.
Um, let me see, which one do I want to do. Let's do this one. This is one from Monga Bay. Deep sea hotels reveal 20 new species hiding in Pacific Ocean twilight zone near Guam. I think deep sea is always something very interesting and very fascinating, and there is so much to explore. And most of the species discoveries that happen is in the deep sea. But anyway, scientists recovered underwater monitoring devices (ARMS) from Guam's deep reefs, revealing wealth of previously unseen marine life. The 8-year study yielded 2,000 specimens, including 100 species new to the region and at least 20 potentially new to science, thriving in the ocean's twilight zone, 55 to 100 meters deep. Noticeable discoveries include unique fish, sea slugs, and other creatures adapted to the dim environment. Temperature sensors also confirmed ocean warming is impacting these deeper ecosystems. The arms, the underwater monitoring devices, acting as artificial reefs, provided a platform for collecting these specimens, offering unprecedented insight into largely unexpected habitat and fulfilling a lifelong dream for explorer Luis Rocha. That is cool. I think, as I said, like all of the discoveries, most of the discoveries will happen in the ocean because that is the last uncharted um, area.
Area. Did you share? Do you want me to share the screen
Sure,
or?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, let me just share
Lots of
on
photos in
this.
this article.
Yes, lots of photos. Um, so this is the photo of a few of the species, and they're not to scale. So not to imagine that the little lobster that we're seeing and the octopus or the squid we're seeing are the same size. They're all different species, but there's some fish, there's some slugs, there's some crustaceans. and cephalopods. So there are different kinds of species that you can see, but they're all really colorful. They're all really different. They're all unique. So that's amazing that their 8 year long study could bring all of this up. But at the same time, as they have said, and we've spoken about in the last story as well, they're saying that climate warming and ocean warming is impacting these species. So that's
Mm,
sad because we've just found them and we do not know how long we will have them with us.
mm, I wonder, just curious, why deep sea creatures have such beautiful colorations on them. I wonder that. I think if we go even more deep than this twilight zone, then they lose all the color. But I think there is some function of color still in this zone, the
I think
55 to 100-meter zone.
it's not really the color, it's the color that gives off some kind of light. So they might either have reflective light in them, or they might have light that reflects off something, or they have light that they produce on their own. So which is why they all look colorful. But like if you see the shrimp actually probably like produces its own light. That's why you can see just the
Yeah,
light
no,
and
no, the
lighted
shrimp
surface.
is fine, but I'm just talking about the octopus or the crab-like thing that is there, or the fish, because there is, if they can't see, then there is no use of there's no evolutionary function of them having colorful bodies or things like that.
I
But
think
maybe,
even with the fish, it might have some fluorescent, what do you say, radiation or fluorescent color in it. Most of the species that stay in that area around 55, there's still some light, which is why it's twilight. So there's some light, there's some color that is still visible. It's not pitch dark.
mm,
I think below 100 meters, it's pitch dark, which is why then they have those,
everything is,
like,
yeah.
like a bulb, and they have those just really big globus eyes, and they have full-on artificial lights like the species that live
Hmm.
there. These ones still get a little bit of sunlight, so which is why I think they still have their color, and they have other ways of producing light.
True, true.
And this is one of the photos of the arms that has been deployed, and the divers are going up after deploying them. So these are the devices that have been deployed there in 2018.
Cool stuff. Very cool. Very cool.
And this is the arms after 8 years underwater. They have pictured the same equipment. As you can see, the reef has color there, so it's still not that dark. The reef has color. The fish that you can see in the pictures have color, so it's not that dark that it is devoid of color at that level.
True, true.
And these are some of the species that they're showing separately. Newly discovered sea slug. Um, that looks like a tiny whale shark for some reason, like the coloring. Yeah, this is an orange cardinal fish, a baby octopus with polka dots, and this is where I think the divers are heading down into Guam's blue hole.
Such a cool discovery, including so
Yeah.
many people, and um, yeah.
Mm. And this is the plates in the arm. So they I think they take the sections out, and then they study each plate and whatever species are on that plate. So these are the sections of those plates. Then they spend their time between 55 and 100 meters, and now they are colonized with sponges and tube worms and anemones and algae and more. So this is to show that environment, like the underwater, everything can thrive and everything can become a home for anything. So you place something, and eventually it becomes a home for a lot of species. So in this case, sponges, tube worms, anemones, algae, all of them share these plates,
Mm,
and the plates look beautiful that way.
yeah,
They look like paintings that you would
they
like
do.
want to
They
sell.
do.
Yeah.
They do, actually. Maybe
Yeah.
someone is painting these things and making them into little frames or something like that. But beautiful, beautiful discovery, beautiful story as well.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the underwater world would always continue to fascinate us. These are 20 species, 100 species, but there are so many more undiscovered species that we keep coming across. So it's just beautiful how amazing our our earth is, and so much of it is still unexplored.
True. True.
Okay,
Cool.
I think I will give a small update with the Florida bear hunt, and you can then go on to the next topic.
Very cool.
So, as you guys know, I think a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months ago, we spoke about the Florida bear hunt, and it was our headline topic. And we had even given an update of how many licenses were then issued, because there was a lot of opposition for the bear hunt. These bears were endangered. Then the bears bounced back, and they said, "Oh, now that there are enough bears, I think we should let people shoot them down." So. Heartbreaking. Florida's wildlife groups decree the state sanctioned bear hunt. Florida's recent 3 week black bear hunt concluded with 52 bears killed, sparking outrage from wildlife groups. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission deemed the hunt a success, citing population control as the reason, and plans to release a detailed report. However, organizations like Humane World for Animals strongly condemn the hunt as heartbreaking and based on flawed science. Critics specifically object to methods used, including bait traps, archery, and dog packs. A poll commissioned by Humane World for Animals revealed 81% of Floridians oppose bear hunting, with even greater opposition to baiting and the use of dogs. Activists expressed dismay over celebratory photos of hunters with slain bears, calling the event a damaging spectacle. This marks Florida's first bear hunt in a decade. So we did speak about this. We spoke about how do we know that these are enough bears, or how do we know that when they're sanctioning so many licenses, how do we know that this is fine? And this is the same thing I think these opposition groups are picking up, because they're saying, where is the science? And I think Oops and me also discussed this, that there was no science to issue these permits. And as far as we remember, I think there were 72 or 73 permits issued, and 52 bears have been killed. I hope that is the actual number, and that is just not a a suppressed number that's come out.
Hmm.
And it's rather heartbreaking to know that it was not just guns that you could use. You could use bait traps that would actually trap a bear, and then it would die in pain over time. And dog packs, I mean, why would you be allowed to do all of that? Like, I thought the whole thing of hunting was just this whole ego thing of, oh, I shot a bear. So the torture, I
I
don't
think
understand.
I think there might be more to it. I've just opened up the script for episode 12, which we titled Bloodthirsty Hunters. You guys can go check it out. 160,000 applications were there. The FWC wanted to issue 172 permits, and this was rightly said in this article too. This was a decade after. So last one was in 2015, where 300 bears were killed, and this time only 52 were killed. So I take that as a win overall. This was a story from September 2025, and it was going to happen, so we reported on that. And you know overall the numbers look good. You know, at least good in the sense that it is bettering towards, you know, going towards the number zero, which is always good. So 300 bears in 2015, 52 bears now, 160,000 applications, but only 172 permits and 52 killed. The trend seems to be going in the right direction. But on the other point that you mentioned, there might be something more to it. Like they might all of the people that want to kill these bears, all of them might not be wanting to kill these bears only for that ego boost. Some of them might be wanting to kill these bears for their skin. So that's why they might not want to kill it, but after the bear has died, they might want to take their skin and paws and whatnot off to make a rug or something like that. That might be a motivation. That's why there might have been so many applications there.
But it is quite inhumane to have like a bear trapped in a bear trap, or
Oh, that's
use
true. I
use
mean,
like a pack of dogs that are trained to kind of kill, and then you just leave this pack of dogs and a bear that's done nothing to you. So that makes zero sense.
yeah. I mean, when have we shied away from inhuman things? That
That
yeah,
is true. But also, I think the whole point of, if you have saved the bears for 10 years, the even if it is 52 versus 300, you can say it is an improvement, but it's not a good way to show your appreciation for the success of conservation. I mean, okay, now that they've bounced back, let's shoot a few. That's not how conservation should work. Like, if you work towards conservation and you know that these bears are thriving, then let them thrive. Like, why are you bringing back hunts and then kind of bringing this bloodlust thirstiness into the people that, yeah, like, let's hunt down the bears just because they bounce back.
that's a very twisted way of going about things, I think. Um,
No, imagine if we increase in population and there are like man-eating tigers or man-eating bears, we would shoot them down, saying that, oh, they are going after us. So if they have the same bloodlust, we are not happy with it. But if we have the same bloodlust, we kind of always justify it.
yeah. No, I think I yeah, the hunting of these keystone species is, I feel like it's almost like a high school student. I remember my childhood as well, when we used to wait for, when is the vacation coming, when is the vacation coming, and we'd be so happy and do all these things in our all the spare time, all the free time that we had in a vacation. It's similar to that. Like, people are waiting. Oh, when is the bear population increasing? When can we do this again? When can we do this again? And as soon as that moment arrives, everyone is like flooding the fish and game department with all these applications, and they want to do it. But I think there are strong strong opposing forces, um, which are working for the good of the bears, which is a great thing, um, which we
Yeah.
want.
And this is the update we have, and we will keep you updated in the future if they're going to go for another hunt next year. Hopefully, this is not a regular thing and it was a one off thing, and all the opposition that has come through, it has some impact. But this is the update we have so far.
True. Cool. Let me do the next one, which I have talked about a lot. I also made a video on our channel about this, when this actually happened. Um, this is a report from The Guardian. They did not de extinct anything, in quotes. Can colossals, genetically engineered animals, ever be the real thing? This article goes on to say Colossal Biosciences, led by Ben Lamb, gained prominence in 2025 with claims of quote unquote de extinction, sparking both investment. I think that's what they wanted, sparking investment. And that's why they had to make that announcement, and they had to do all the media, publications and media press conferences around it, sparking both investment and criticism. The company announced the creation of a genetically engineered direwolf and woolly mice as steps towards reviving the woolly mammoth. Further projects aim to resurrect the Tasmanian tiger, dodo, and giant moa. While Lamb asserts progress is being made, skeptics question whether these genetically modified animals truly represent the original species. Colossal's approach, characterized by Silicon Valley style showmanship, which I think is the whole another whole can of worms, has attracted billions in funding. Despite controversy, Lamb remains confident in the Mammoth Revival Plan, framing the work as significant advancement in genetic conservation. The core debate centers on authenticity of these recreated creatures and the ethics of altering genomes. Um, I think my views are very clear on this, that this is not re-engineered or resurrected species. This is purely, uh,
New
you're putting.
species. They're all
It
new
is not even a
species.
new species. It is not even a new species. It cannot be a new species. It is a same species with a few genetic. It's a species with some makeup put on. That's what it is. As it stands currently, this might look like a direwolf, and we exactly don't know how a direwolf looked like, so we are not sure. But they think that this looks like a direwolf, or the mice have a woolly mammoth like, um, you know, hair or whatever. But that's still a mice. Like, if I do some genetic modifications on myself and I grow and I make all the stripes on me like a tiger, would I be a tiger? Would I be a new species? No, never. um so yeah, that is what it is. And I think the ethical concerns are very clear that, this is meant for a showmanship like, um, execution of things. It's meant to attract investment, which it has. Um, so I think that's what it was intended for, and that's what it received. Now,
Yeah, and
the other.
I think the sad part about this is the kind of funding that it's receiving for animals that do
Mm,
not exist, have not existed, and cannot
and
exist
the
in
niche is gone.
probably, yeah,
The
exactly,
niche is.
that they cannot exist in today's environment, but billions is coming into funding. And there are animals literally at the, what do you say, the altar of extinction, like dugongs and vaquitas and different kind of animals, like the rhinos in so many places. These need the funding to protect them, to conserve them, to make sure that their populations can bounce back. These animals still have the niche. They're still alive. They're just really, really threatened. And instead of pumping money into that, you want to pump money into something that is just a promise. Because
It's
in this
science
article,
fiction.
exactly, and in this article, if you see, they say, wait, let me just share this, because so this is one of the dire wolves, apparently, at the age of
Quote
one.
unquote, yeah.
Yeah, and critics say the farm merely tweaked grey wolf genes but did not resurrect innocent dirus, which is true because there is nothing to resurrect. They don't have the actual body, the actual genes to resurrect them. So they are trying, or they're saying that this is what it is. And similarly, if you see this, these are the two mice, and they're saying a genetically edited mouse with thick hair at a lab. And below that they've said Colossal is created the woolly mouse as part of its plan to recreate mammoths by making an elephant cold tolerant. So it's going to have elephant genes, the elephant that lives today. It's going to have those same genes. They're trying to make it cold tolerant. They're going to try to make it grow fur, and then they're going to say that is the woolly mammoth, but that is not the woolly mammoth because it doesn't have the genes of the animal, the elephants today. It had completely different genes. It was meant for the ice age. It was just a different time, different era, different ecosystem, and different niche. So this
Yeah.
this is just a way to just make money off people. They're rich billionaires, and then give them hope and glimmer of something that doesn't exist. So they feel like this is a great investment with a great
I
return.
think the people who are investing in this also know that there's no point in, there's no hope in this whole scenario. um Everyone who is invested in this probably already know that there is absolutely no hope in this scenario.
No,
This does not mean,
I mean, if you know
bringing
businessmen,
back.
if you know businessmen and you know how they use the money, there is no absolute way that they would invest into something if they did not have hope. Businessmen are really ruthless
No,
with their
they
money.
might have hope that these things are coming back, but I don't think they're stupid enough to think that this is the real species coming back, or these species can be reintegrated into the current ecosystems. Now, Peter Jackson has invested a lot of money, in bringing back the New Zealand great moa. Now, why? Because it would be a cool thing to look at in a zoo, or in a park of some kind, like a Jurassic Park. But that is it. Like, we might look at this thing and say, okay, this looks like a moa, and instead of making that 3D image or a graphical image of a moa, we can just see a live animal that resembles a moa. But that's not a moa. That This is not a woolly mammoth. This is not a dire wolf. This is a gray wolf with some modified genes, with some makeup put on.
But it actually depends of that what is the pitch, because when you're pitching to billionaires across the world and you're getting such kind of funding, your pitch has to be perfect. So Colossal is doing something right in trying to
Mhm.
secure this. Because anyone who's gone to even these Shark Tank kind of places know how difficult the pitch is to get this kind of funding. So there is some kind of promise given to this, and there's some kind of promise that these billionaires or investors or whoever is investing in believe it. So there is some kind of belief that has been given to them that this would be as close to the real thing as possible, or this is the real thing. It is
But
the critics that are questioning it, but the investors are probably not questioning it. That is why they have given the money and the pitch is perfect.
tell me this, the primary thing any investor would be looking for, the primary thing before everything else, is how do I get a return on my investment? And the only way I see Colossal making that promise, because this amount, if they're investing billions of dollars, as this article says, then they might not be just happy with the environmental impact of it, even if Colossal is making such a pitch. So I think the only way the Colossal can promise that they would really truly get a return on their investment is by saying that we'll make a theme park out of these animals and people can come and visit, and this would generate millions and billions of dollars. That's the only way. Or movies, I don't know.
No, that is true. That is true. That has to be the only way. It will be really controlled environments, and people will be able to come and see them. And that is the only way that you would have return on investment, because you're telling these billionaires that I am making this so that there is Jurassic themed park that
Hmm?
people can come and visit. It's literally that
Pleistocene,
movie's
yeah.
plot. Yeah,
Pleistocene Park, yeah.
yeah, it has to be the plot of that movie. It's just that things may or may not go wrong as it shows there, but in this case they're promising the investors that this is a gold mine, like an idea where everybody would want to come and see these animals that they cannot see today.
Yeah, and Peter Jackson might have already planned a few movies with these moas, featuring these moas, because I don't know if you can clone a thing and make as many of this thing as you want, then the same ethical guidelines might not apply to a genetically cloned animal as applies to maybe a real animal, and they could
No,
have,
no, it's the opposite. I would feel like a genetically cloned animal is so expensive, so like you would be
No, no, I'm
even
saying
more
the ethical
careful.
considerations, like how you
Yeah,
put in flames. No animals were harmed during the making of this films.
yeah.
A genetically cloned animal might not be as ethically, valuable as a species that is naturally born. So, only time will tell. But in my view, again, we are not billionaires, so we can't think as billionaires, and we don't know what this company Colossal is pitching. I'll say that they have great pitching skills to hit the right nerves of these billionaires. I only wish, and I think Meghna will agree, that they use this their skill to actually save species that are you know teetering on the brink of extinction.
Yeah, I think my main problem with all of this is one, those species will not exist today, and we do not have anything like the proper DNA or the proper genetic makeup to bring back those species. And even if we did, I don't understand why we want to bring back those species, because they don't belong in today's world. And
Mm,
secondly, I actually am really disappointed with how much funding has gone into something as useless and frivolous as this. But I think this is how the human race is. Like they would spend billions of in money to send something up in space, but they wouldn't spend the same amount of money to explore the ocean or explore something on land or try to save the poor people or poor animals or something. So this will always be a debate of where the money goes.
Hmm.
But this
I
is
think I
just
think I just want to comment two more things there. One thing is definitely on a slightly um, I wouldn't say positive, but slightly benefiting to the human knowledge side of things is that a lot of new techniques of genetic editing. So CRISPR is the method that we use, and it's fascinating. I can talk about it for hours, but I would refrain myself. But CRISPR is the method that we use for genetic splicing and genetic editing. So, a new method of editing multiple sections of the genome at the same time is a technology that has come out of Colossal's research. So, that will be, I'm sure, will be helpful and applicable to other different spaces as well. So that is there are some truly technologically great things that have come out of this research in terms of pure science that they're doing. And I also feel like if Colossal is giving back to the charities and the foundations that are working towards saving the actual species that are, you know, are going to be extinct if not given the proper funding, then I think that would be also a great thing. One of the examples of that is, again, not colossal, but a species that actually needed some funding and some genetic modifications to survive is the American chestnut. Um, that was a species that was dying of this disease. I can't recall the name of the disease. It was dying of this disease. It was just decimating the disease in the American Northwest, I think. Um, Now, that tree or that species of um, chestnut was genetically modified to make it resistant to that particular strain of disease that was decimating their populations and was preventing them from growing in that region, and it was endemic to that region. That genetic modification actually saved the species, and there can be numerous examples of such kind of species where genetic modification in them would actually save them from a disease or something that is affecting the environment, which is out of our immediate control. So
and even
I just
without
hope.
genetic modification, I mean, like dugongs and vaquitas and other animals, that there are
Hmm,
only like so many of them. They need all the money and all the conservation efforts to make sure that they can multiply and actually survive. But
hmm.
the money is not going there. It's all going into stupid things. But we are stupid people, and we put
Yeah,
money into stupid things. That's just
seems
how we
like
are.
it. I just hope Colossal gives even 1 or 2% of the money that is raising, of the funds that they're raising towards the actual charities. And I think the government should come in and say that you must. I don't know. But
I don't know. I mean, they
that
should
might be
actually
hoping
just
too much.
But they should just close down the entire process, if you ask me. But I think that is too much of an ask.
That is. But anyway, um, that
Okay.
was it for this one. Um, yeah, really
Yes.
hope something good comes out of this. Hoping too much, but yeah, we'll keep you updated.
Yes. Let's get on to the next topic. Um, this one is of the great white sharks that may become extinct in the Mediterranean.
Hmm.
Um,
Look at this, a prime example.
Yeah, so great white sharks are facing potential extinction in the Mediterranean Sea due to illegal fishing, according to new research by US scientists and the Blue Marine Foundation. Despite international protection, at least 40 great whites were killed in North African ports in 2025 alone, with evidence including verified social media footage of sharks being sold in markets in Algeria and Tunisia. The Mediterranean is heavily fished, impacting shark populations which have dramatically declined in recent decades. Beyond great whites, over 20 other Mediterranean shark species are also protected, yet continue to be illegally caught and sold. Researchers emphasize the urgent need to address this issue to prevent the loss of these vital marine predators. And I think we've spoken about this a lot of times. But again, great white sharks are the apex predators. Now, if you take off the apex predators, whatever is directly under it, let's say these groupers or these sharks that these great whites used to eat, they would multiply. And if they multiply, they would need more food. So whatever is right under them, they would demolish that. And the fish under them would go haywire. So there's not going to be any kind of hierarchy. And the entire system collapses when you take off the predator. In fish, they say fish eat fish eat fish. So if you're going to take off some fish in one of the hierarchy, all the fish are going to disappear eventually. So this is really sad to hear that 40 were just caught alone in 2025. Like 40 were killed. Like that is a huge number. That is an extremely huge number for great white sharks. And all of them were killed in the ports. All of them were sold in these
Mm,
markets.
yeah. I mean, it's truly such a keystone species, great white sharks, and predators, taking out predators might be good for a while. The species below it might be thriving for a while, but sooner rather than later, they would just disappear. And this is a prime example, the things we were talking about. This needs funding, this needs research, this needs government pressures from preventing these kinds of trolling and fishing expeditions. But
And even to like put a check on all these illegal activities, because they're saying that 20 other different species of Mediterranean sharks are protected, but yet illegally all of this happens. This illegal fishing and illegal shark poaching is one of the main problems most of the systems are decimating across the world. There's a lot of illegal shark fishing happening everywhere across the world, and there needs to be like tighter rules and stricter punishments uh, for this to make sure that these sharks can thrive.
yeah, um, and we have talked about, I think, um, shark trade a lot
Especially with
on
the Brazil story, yeah,
correct, correct.
which was
They,
in,
that
yeah.
that took a positive turn the last we reported, but this, like, great white sharks are such a keystone species that if you remove them, we're not even sure what would happen, because
Yeah,
they
and
are the apex predators
they
in
are,
in the ocean.
yeah, and they have
Apex of the
survived.
apex.
And they've survived like millions of years, and we come in and we are suddenly like killing them left, right, and center. And we might not have any great white sharks left, but just because this generation decided to kill these animals that have survived for like millions of years. I'm sharing a photo of the great white shark on the screen, and then there's a photo of this great white shark head.
Oh,
So, and its
painful.
meat being sold in the market. So I think this is a way for them to show which shark's meat is available, which is why the head is probably there with the board on it. So this, so they are protected, but they're being sold openly in the fish markets in North
Hmm.
America. And these are the researchers that work from a vessel to check out what is happening with the sharks and what is happening with everything locally.
I think this is something the Colossal should be working on. How do we make meat, like clone and make meat, fake meat, which tastes, looks, and you know has the same nutritional benefits, as the real thing. If you want shark meat, we have shark meat. If you want whale meat, you have whale meat. If you want cow, goat, any kind of meat you want, we can just make it in a lab.
The thing
Where are
is,
the
I
billions for
think
that?
I think there is a lot of research and a lot of this lab made meat, but a lot of people are not on board with lab made meat because they're like, oh, this would have chemicals, this is not natural. So I'm not sure how many people will be on board with such kind of things. But apart from that, I mean, look, even this guy who, James Glancy, even he's holding a dead shark and he's showing all the sharks, the protected sharks that are being sold in the markets. This is where I think it gets tricky because in these markets there need to be some kind of awareness. It's always the developing countries that are targeted, that are given these, the fishermen in these poor countries are given money so that they can go and shark these sharks. They do not understand that they are actually like uh, kind of making lives harder for themselves, because if they're taking the sharks out of the equation, they would actually have lesser and lesser fish to survive locally. So they do not understand that, because they're getting good money to capture these sharks, and they're the ones that are always exploited. They're the ones who are ready to do illegal things.
And I think that in their scenario, in their scenario, that might be the best thing for themselves. They're just looking out for themselves. They are really strapped for money. Maybe they are in a developing country. They have families to feed and things like that. So if there is a demand, then they are doing it for their own,
True, true.
survival.
But change can happen, because in Indonesia, there's actually a place where Indonesia, they would hunt down the sharks, and one of the shark researchers and someone who works with all of them, she made sure that they could switch to tourism instead, and she does boat tours now to go and see the sharks instead of capture the sharks. So that is one very good way of changing. So if you want to check it out, it's Project HIU. HIU. So it's a great project that's taking people from being shark hunters to becoming shark protectors. And there's the locals only, the same locals that are being paid to hunt are now being paid to just show the tourists that these are sharks and they're thriving in this environment. This is something that can be done in Africa as well. Uh, Obviously, there are safety concerns, there are different concerns, but slowly, I think the people need to be shown different ways of making money instead of hunting down these sharks. So if you can show that protection is going to bring them more money, they would protect them.
And I think also we talked about this a few episodes back as well. Marine protections protections often are not enforced as strictly and as efficiently as ground protections against poaching and things like that are. So I think there
True,
is
but
a
it's also
role for governments to play there as well, in policy, making those policies of banning these kinds of things and also enforcing those policies.
But I think the problem with land versus ocean is, oops, the land you can have a lot of let's say trackers and rangers and checkposts and different kind of things. But the ocean is a huge place. So anyone who has to go and illegally fish, they would go in the middle of the night. They would go to faraway spots that probably take 3, 4, 5 days to go and return back. There's nobody checking, and there's no checkpost as such that you can enforce in the middle of the ocean. So that is where it becomes tricky. Maybe there can be more drone usage to check the water for illegal fishing vessels. Maybe there can be more vessels that do patrolling. But there has to be something else, because the checkposts for land versus water are very different.
But they have to leave from land somewhere. So if we even monitor the shorelines, that again, drones is a great use. Automated things are great in these situations, but I'm sure that if we look into it, we definitely will understand and know these kinds of things. And the other thing with ocean navigation too is at some point the skippers or the boat has to switch on their GPS system or some kind of electromagnetic system, because otherwise navigation is completely out of bounds in the open ocean. And those are some signals that might we might need to detect as well. Better towers, better systems to detect those kinds of signals and things like that. There. If we look into it, I'm sure that there are 10 different ways we can do this thing, but it's just a matter of us reaching that point and saying, okay, this is something we need to do.
Yeah, and imagine this is the Mediterranean, like the place where a lot of tourists already go. Like
Hmm.
not the African part of it, but the European part of it. And this is probably affecting the entire sea there. And still, none of the governments are coming together to make sure that these sharks can be protected. That the locals can find an alternate, because even if you're, let's say, you're punishing illegal. Shark fishing people, what are they supposed to do? So you have to give them some kind of alternate, some way that they do
It's
not
very
go for the
easy to be
sharks.
high and mighty for us or for the richer countries and go, okay, this should be stopped. But without an actual on ground solution and an actual alternative to their livelihood. It's just a cruel punishment for the people who are depending on these kinds of things. Um,
Yeah, and also the nations that are actually asking for these kind of sharks, the ones that are sold inside Africa, it's different. But there are also, I'm sure there's probably a small amount or a sizable amount of them being exported, because if the locals were to eat them, I'm not sure if the locals actually enjoy shark as much as they would enjoy other fish. So that demand has to stop. Like if India is one of the biggest shark fishing nations, it's because there is demand. Or if Indonesia is one of the biggest shark fishing nations, it's because of demand. That demand has to change from the
mm,
countries that consume sharks.
yeah, that again feels like should be a non-negotiable, but we have a long way to get there. But certainly hope, that again this is the intention of our show, by talking about it and by spreading this message, we hope that this takes hold, and this you know is um, something that we can you know uh, inculcate in us, going forward.
Yep. I think that that is the sad part, that we have to actually just rely on hope, and only hope that there can be policy changes. Obviously, the people are protesting, the people are trying, but we have to hope that everyone starts looking at the environment and climate as the number one priority over everything else, and work towards it, than work against it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think this is a non-negotiable, but for some reason it is, I don't know, taking us such a long time to reach there, and sometimes we are walking in the other direction.
Yeah, I think we will actually start walking in the correct direction soon, but we have to see how soon. But
Hmm.
I think that's about it on this topic. We have to just wait and watch and see if there's some respite for the sharks there. Do you want to take up some other topic or some species discovery?
um I already did one. Maybe you can do a species discovery, and then we can pick up another topic.
Sure. Okay. So we're going to go with
Actually, I'll do a species one. Then you can take up the Pangong So story that you wanted to do. I think.
sure, sure. I can do that.
Cool. A new frog species emerges from Peru's cloud forests, and it's already at risk. A new frog species, Orebates Shunkutsa, named Shunkutsacha, meaning heart of the forest, in Quechua Lamesta, has been discovered in the remote cloud forests of Peru's San Martin region. The discovery resulted from expeditions led by local indigenous and community monitors alongside Peruvian